Hey, Tony Gaskins here. I want to touch on this because I had this conversation several times over the last couple of months, and in talking with clients, male and female, about just the construct of marriage and what a man needs from his wife. And here's the thing. When it comes to men are, for the most part, very simple. And what gets a man going and what moves a man to action and inspiration is going to be different than what does it for a woman. And what I found in a lot of cases is, especially when women have children, the children become the woman's focus, her pride, her joy, and it really gives her the release that she needs. And then women will do other things like the makeup, Botox, the gym, girls' nights, conversations at work, all different type of things can give a woman a release. And on average, a lot of women don't necessarily need to be intimate with a man to be pleased. And you see this to be so with women who are abstinent, women who are celibate, women who are single and serving God in whatever religion they may be in. And so sex is forbidden and they're being faithful to their God. So they're not having sex. Whereas you rarely meet men who are abstinent and abstinent for long periods of time. But I remember traveling around the world doing speaking engagements, and in the relationship seminars, I would say, who in here is abstinent? And these hands would go up. And then when I would say, who's been abstinent for a year, a lot of hands will be up. 2 years, still a lot of hands. 3 years. And I went as high as like 8 years, I think. And there was still a woman standing. She had been abstinent for 8+ years. And I could have gotten a 10 or 12 on one of these seminars. And you probably have never met a man who has been abstinent for more than a year once, meaning other than men who are virgins. So therefore, when it comes to a marriage and being in this marriage, a lot of times women don't realize that the currency is for a man who is a provider is affection and attention and intimacy from his wife. And one of the things that a husband doesn't want to always have to do is to initiate the intimacy. A husband doesn't want to always be on the hunt, on the prowl, and always trying to figure out what buttons to push and what he has to do to get his wife to be intimate. And this is a very common conversation that is not really being talked about. And I just seen it yesterday online about this, where a bunch of men was in the comments and they were talking about this and how I've seen women online who are like kind of and bragging about the fact that they slept with their husband twice in a year, or bragging about the fact that, like making light of all the excuses that they make when their husband wants to be intimate. And this is the worst, the absolute worst, and one of the most cruel things that a woman can do to a man who is a faithful man and a providing man is to withhold sex just because everything is not aligned within her heart and mind and body. Now, a good man he will be respectful of his wife's feelings and her body, but it's not on, a woman shouldn't always put it on a man to know. And let me help you understand what I mean. So if the man has to like get up and he has to go to work, and he's leaving the house, or even if he works at home, you best believe that there's no days that he feels like going to work. Like, he goes to work out of obligation. He has to work. There's no days that he feels like dealing with his coworkers, that he feels like dealing with his boss or his employees. There's no days. So the same way a woman could say, today I got a headache. Today I got a stomach ache. Today I have a toe ache. Today I have this. Today I have that. Today I have that. Every single day, a man could find an excuse of why he doesn't want to go and provide for his family. So women have to understand that if you have a husband who is going out and he is providing, what he needs is reciprocation. Now, some women say, well, what if I'm providing? Then that means both of you are tired, meaning, what if I'm providing too? Then that means both of you are tired. Both of you are doing what you have to do, what you don't feel like. And so both of you have to meet in the middle when it comes to intimacy. And you have to prioritize it in the sense of understanding that sex is a plus, not a priority, but you have to prioritize it in order for it to happen. So what I mean by that is we can't put everything, as men or women, we can't put everything into just sex alone. It should be a plus, and it should not ruin and destroy and be everything, or be everything our marriage is built on. But you still have to make the time to make it happen. And I'll be honest with you, I've heard a lot of men, and you'll see it's men who are, maybe they're working or they're dealing with financial stress, that affects a man's body, and he may not be able to perform or feel the energy or just what he needs to perform. And it may be the other way. It may be the woman is really, really, wanting to be intimate, and the man isn't feeling it because of what's wrong with him. And the same thing applies in that moment. In those times, the man has to find a way to show intimacy with his woman, to where if his body part down there isn't working, he has to get something else to work in order to. And what you have to understand about intimacy, it doesn't always have to be so physical. It could be other things that you enjoy as a couple, that come from making out, cuddling, even just lingerie, or whatever it may be, Netflix and chill. But that intimacy, in whatever form, it releases chemicals into the bloodstream that builds the immune system and builds just the feel good feelings, and creates a bond and strengthens the couple and the relationship. And that has to be understood. And so what I want you to understand is, like the Bible says that, and somebody find the scripture and put it in the chat. The Bible talks about how a man cannot deny his woman his body, and a woman should not deny a man, her husband, her body. Okay, now this is now a lot of time the Bible say the same thing in different parts. But First Corinthians chapter 7, verse 5, this GNT, that's some type of translation, good news translation. Let me see. We'll get to the King James, which is very, very common. Defraud ye not one the other, except it be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. Now we're going to read that. We'll read that in the American Standard. Now, what? Let me get to that. I like that old New Living. That old New Living translation. Be doing what it need to do. New Living translation is, I love that one. Do not deprive, this First Corinthians chapter 7, chapter 7, verse 5. Do not deprive each other of sexual relations, unless you both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time, so you can give yourselves more completely to prayer. Now, ain't none of y'all fasting from sex so you could pray. And so when we not being intimate, what we doing is we consoling a headache, bloating, stomach ache, back ache, some kind of ache, some kind of anguish, some kind of ailment is something that we giving into. And that's when we have to take and make our health, our sleep, our exercise a priority to get our body firing on all cylinders so that we could come together. It say afterward, you should come together again. That mean have sex. Come together mean have sex. It don't mean hold hands, and it don't mean Netflix and chill. It mean have sex. You should come together again so that Satan won't be able to tempt you because of your lack of self-control. See, the thing about that good book is it touch on a whole lot. I don't know if it continues. Now, right, it say, I say this as a concession, not as a command. So that is just letting you know, like, this is some advice. But this ain't thus saith the Lord. But I wish everyone were single just as I am. Yet each person has a special gift from God of one kind or another. So that's what I think this Paul who talking. Now we're going to go up a little bit. Okay, instruction on marriage. 1 Corinthians chapter 7. We're going to go to chapter 7, verse 1. Now, regarding the questions you asked in your letter. See, they had some questions for Paul. Yes, it is good to abstain from sexual relations. It's talking about y'all who you serving the Lord and you single. But because there is so much sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman should have her own husband. So as you see this right here clearly saying, we're not with the polyamory, we're not with the polyamorous, we're not with the multiple. Have your own. The husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. The wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. Now that was 1 through 3 before what we read about verse 5. That was verse 1 through 3 about verse 5, do not deprive each other of sexual relations unless you both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time so you can give yourselves more completely to prayer. So this is what has to be understood, is that yes, You need to come together, and you need to understand that that headache may be from the adversary. That sense of entitlement, or that abuse that you operating in by not being intimate with your spouse, your husband or your wife, so that you can teach a lesson or what have you. That feeling that you feeling, and that stomach ache, that bloating, that headache, that migraine, that fingernail splinter, toenail, hip pointer, knee pain, a lot of that come from the adversary to make it to where you don't feel like being intimate. Because what you got to understand about that intimacy, it is spiritual, and it brings you closer together. So you have to adjust your mind. You got to fix your mind to embrace it, to enjoy it, to love it, and to know that this is a spiritual thing, and you coming together, and the two spirits becoming one to form a third. And even when you're not having a child, or you're not gonna, you're not, can't get pregnant, you still, the brain goes through the same process of the two spirits combining to create a third. And so this exchange of this bodily fluid and this connection is very intimate, is very spiritual, and it's very bonding. And that's why there is nothing casual about sex. And you have to realize and understand that there is nothing casual about sex. And so this has to be, you have to be intentional about this with your spouse, and understand that you will cause your spouse to be more susceptible to temptation by Satan if you are not coming together and being intimate. But as Paul said in chapter 10, but for those who are married, I have a command that comes not from me, but from the Lord. Now verse 10, a wife must not leave her husband, but if she does leave him, let her remain single, or else be reconciled to him. And the husband must not leave his wife. Now I will speak to the rest of you, though I do not have a direct command from the Lord. You see how he said it? If a fellow believer has a wife who is not a believer, and she is willing to continue living with him, he must not leave her. And if a believing woman has a husband who is not a believer, and he's willing to continue living with her, she must not leave him. For the believing wife brings holiness to her marriage, and the believing husband brings holiness to his marriage. Otherwise your children would not be holy, but now they are holy. I love how Paul would say, this from the Lord right here, now this over here from me. But God still authorized it and allowed it to be written word. Hey, so get on that 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Get that in your spirit. I ain't going to go through the whole thing. Well, we might get on it one day for a Sunday sermon. God bless you. We'll talk soon.